So, I guess today's discussion really brought up a lot of key points that are really helping me kind of guide my learning as of this point so far. Specifically, how we've gotten a little bit more in depth with ESEA and pulled out specific initiatives and programs that were born from that. And I thought it was really interesting seeing how part of LBJ's war on poverty was providing early education opportunities for disadvantaged students. And I think it's interesting because I was in the same position in terms of growing up in like the northern suburbs of Denver and not being English proficient, really. Having spoken Spanish in the household before going into actual public school settings. The pre-K, quote-unquote, program that I was a part of was really centered around trying to, like, take me out of my culture, take me out of the language, and have this immersiveness within English. And I think now looking back on that experience, like, that was really detrimental to my, like, cultural identity, because at home I was able to, like, speak Spanish and that's how we always communicated. But as I started entering this pre-K program and then eventually public school, I just couldn't speak Spanish anymore. Like, it was frowned upon. And I have these memories of, like, my aunt, who was always stressing me to learn English, slapping my hand when I would speak Spanish with her, and she'd say, "No, in English," in the most, like, chopped up funny way. But it was almost like I got the Spanish beaten out of me and had to, like, adopt and accustom myself to this new culture being English speaking and predominantly white in the school that I was at during elementary school. And I think that in itself was really, really discouraging, because that part of my identity, that part of my background isn't as lively or as relevant and apparent as it could have been had my parents really tried to instill duolingualism or bilingualism. And now I find myself, even in, like, group meetings with SOMOS and stuff, being called a coconut, right? Like, brown on the outside but white on the inside. And I think that's partially because of my early childhood educational experience, and how that in itself fed me all of these ideas about, like, you need to adopt this tongue, you need to be able to use it well, and you need to really just be able to communicate with the majority being English speakers. And now when I look back on it, it's kind of a odd place for me, because I really wish I could go back and have that part of my heritage and that part of my culture be alive in me and alive in the way I speak, but it's not. I've kind of, like, taken this tongue, the white man's tongue as I kind of think about it, and used it. And I think I've used it somewhat well, but there's always room for improvement. And I think having these insights in class, kind of correlating back to my own previous experiences in education, has kind of started to bring things more full circle and, like, full picture again, because I'm recognizing how in the long term nobody followed up on me. Nobody followed up on how I was doing after that, and I was tracked. I was put into like LEP classes, right? Limited English Proficiency classes, for the first 3 years of education or the elementary level education I experienced. And now that I think about it, it's like, how did I get out of that? Like, who decided that I was proficient in English? Was it tests that I was taking? Was it, like, the tutor that I had? Or the school itself that made that decision? And I think that lack of information about who's making these decisions is really, really impactful, because students who go through these early childhood education programs end up being labeled before they're even, like, cognitively able to make their own judgments and have that autonomy with their learning and speaking. And it kind of disgusts me and discourages me, because there's just so much more that could be done in terms of like helping supplement a child's growth and supplement a child's experience with their first exposures to kind of formalized education. And I don't necessarily know the answer for how to do that, but I imagine that in our conversations today, how we focused on looking at specific parts of these early childhood education programs, that's what's going to be essential moving forward. So like looking at health education, looking at all these other aspects of how we can track in a tangible way what students are doing, how students are progressing. So this is good. I'm feeling really good about this material. Definitely need to read more. Definitely have like more fuel to inject into this fire of thought and this fire of learning. But I'm looking forward to really unpacking more and trying to string these ideas in more coherent ways, and really just like, I guess, uphold the tongue and the way that I've been able to communicate, or was forced to communicate at first, but now feel a little bit more comfortable and proficient communicating.